Folks, welcome back to another episode of The Fallen Badge. Today, the murder of Officer Reginald Gutierrez, Tacoma Police Department, Washington. Officer Gutierrez was 45 years old. He had 17 years with the Tacoma Police Department. He had a fiancée and 3 children. Now, the information I'm going to use resource material wise primarily going to come from a news article from the Tribune. Now, their information came from a press conference with the chief. It's November 30th, 2016. Our suspect in this case, resource material would seem to indicate he was in all probability a mental consumer. Now, he got into a domestic disturbance with his wife, which seemed to be an ongoing thing. Now, Officer Gutierrez and his partner, they made the scene. Now, they knocked on the front door and there was no answer. Checked the sliding glass door on the back of the house and it was locked. They weren't getting any response. Now, they spoke to the wife. She said she had a relative nearby, but she couldn't remember where her mom-in-law lived, so they drove around for about 40 minutes and she couldn't find the house. Now, during this ride, the officers asked about her husband. The typical questions about, was this normal and was she afraid of him? Now, during this conversation, she didn't mention that her husband had guns. Now, the husband had been stopped just a few weeks earlier in possession of a weapon at a shopping mall. He's wearing a sheriff's ball cap. Police checked him, they let him go, let him keep his gun. Now, they put out a bulletin regarding this suspect, but now Officer Gutierrez and his partner, they weren't aware of it. And also, evidently, Tacoma didn't have any kind of a system to flag addresses. Now, in Memphis, if you were sent on a call, if there had been any previous issues at that address or with anybody that lived there, dispatcher would put that information out because it was in the system. In fact, Memphis would even put out information if there was a house in the block you were going on, to let you know, hey, okay, you're going to this address, but by the way, just a few houses down, there's some dude, he doesn't like the police, or whatever the case may be. So the officers are not aware this suspect likes to play police and he's armed. Now, since there were children inside, the officers decided they needed to do a welfare check, make sure the kids were all right. Well, they couldn't get in, so they decided to call the landlord because the house the suspect and his wife lived in, it was her rental. Now, they called the landlord and she came by. Now, the landlord, she knew the suspect from church. Now, about 5 o'clock, the landlord showed up. So she opens the front door. She goes in, Officer Gutierrez and his partner, and then the wife. Now, this is a split-level house, so as soon as you open the front door, you got stairs that go up to the main floor, and then you got stairs that go down to the basement. Now, the landlord, she hollered out for the suspect, and the suspect answered back. So the landlord, she says, well, I got to go downstairs and get some stuff from storage. And then she says, oh, by the way, the police are here. Well, the suspect wants to know what the police are doing. And the landlord continues to talk and says, well, you're not supposed to be locking your wife out of the house. Suspect says, okay. So the landlord, she walks down the stairs. So Officer Gutierrez, he hollers up to the suspect, and the suspect answers him. And he emphasizes that you don't need to lock your wife out of the house. Well, that didn't get a response. So they decide they're going to go upstairs. So Officer Gutierrez, he goes up first, followed by the partner. Now, the partner, she kind of tells the wife to just stay here on the landing. Now, neither officer had their firearm out, and they still don't know about gun. Now, Officer Gutierrez, when he gets to the top of the stairs, he kind of turns to the right, and according to the post-investigation, the suspect was evidently standing in the corner of the hall. Now, he was armed with a 20-gauge shotgun. Suspect cranked off multiple rounds. I don't know what kind of a 20 gauge, if it was a pump or automatic or what. It's going to have to be one of the two because you couldn't pop off rounds that quick, obviously, with a single shot. So Officer Gutierrez is hitting the upper body and he goes down. And the partner sees this shadowy figure because all the lights are out in the house. Now, evidently, the partner is not right there by Officer Gutierrez because the suspect then takes a shotgun and strikes the officer several times with the butt of the gun. Now the partner, she draws her pistol, fires off 4 rounds, and then the suspect cranks off rounds at her, or at least it's a possibility that he was. He's either firing at her or firing at the fallen figure of Officer Gutierrez. So the partner, she goes back down the stairs, grabs the wife, and runs out of the house. Now she calls for help. Officers show up, and then a lot more police show up. Now inside the house, they can hear shots going off. Another 8, possibly 12 rounds. All these rounds are directed at Officer Gutierrez. ME's report later on would say that the officer was shot 24 times. Now, officers tried to go in the front door and they couldn't get in. So now they start getting some TAC guys there. Not enough to take over the inner perimeter, but enough to start working around the back of the house. So they take the staircase, it goes up to the back deck. Now the sliding door is locked, so they bust the glass and they get in. Now they don't see the suspect, but they see Officer Gutierrez laying in the floor. Now they holler police, they don't get an answer. So then they evac Officer Gutierrez out of the house, take him down the stairs, take him to an ambulance down the street. Now at 5:17 in the evening, the suspect calls 911 and says he's a sheriff and that the police from Tacoma are trying to kill him. Now the landlord, she's still downstairs. When she heard all the shooting, she got into a bathroom and locked the door. She's finally able to make contact with the police, and they're able to evac her from downstairs through the front door. Now this time, TAC is taking over the entire inner perimeter inside the house and the immediate area around the house. Now they can't seem to figure out where the suspect's at. All they know, he's in there somewhere and he's got his 2 kids in there, which is a concern. Now at one point they see the suspect, he's in a bathroom. It's a Jack and Jill bathroom that connects 2 bedrooms. So this goes on for hours. He's in the bathroom, they're on the outside. Well, then they hear some gunshots. They're thinking that the suspect's executing the children. So they breach the bedroom door, toss in flashbangs. The room is empty. Well, then shots start coming through the wall and the door from that bathroom. Well, the police fire back, but then they stop and they retreat from the room because of the kids. Now, those shots that were being fired by the suspect, they were coming from the Glock 45 that belonged to Officer Gutierrez. Now, they start talking to the suspect again about 10:20 that night. They finally work out a deal where they're going to give him some Gatorade. So they said, okay, well, we got the Gatorade outside the door, come get it. Well, he sends his son out there. And the boy went into that bedroom where supposedly the Gatorade was, and then came back into the bathroom without it. The suspect puts the little boy on the phone. The little boy tells the hostage negotiator, he says, there's too many soldiers. They told me to come with them. Obviously talking about the TAC unit. So the poor little boy's been brainwashed by the suspect, his daddy. So some few minutes go by and they're finally able to convince the suspect to come on out and get the Gatorade. Well, the suspect, he sends his son out a second time. And also, by the way, there's a phone charger they've left out there for him. Well, the son comes out there again to get that stuff. Well, this time the TAC units figured out that the poor little boy, this is definitely a Stockholm syndrome. That's his daddy, and he's not scared of him, and he views the police as the bad guys. So now they've figured out, okay, we're not going to tell him to come with us. We're just going to snatch him up. So when he comes out there, they snatch him up, run him down the stairs, and take him out the door. Now finally they talk to the suspect long enough, and they convince him he needs to surrender. So he says, okay, I'm going to surrender. Now they got a sniper with his bolt and scope, and he can see that window that looks into the hallway from that bathroom and the bedroom. Suspect comes out and he's holding his daughter in one arm and he's got his gun in the other. Now if the suspect goes in the proper direction, he's going to go down to the front door and surrender. But instead he cuts back and goes the other way. Well, that tells the sniper that this guy ain't surrendering. He's going to get back into another spot of the house. This is going to go on. Now the sniper already had been given a green light to take a shot when it was available. Sniper put the crosshairs on him, cranked off one round. Suspect went down. That's 3:18 a.m. They were able to get up there and get the little girl, and she was okay, and they got her out. Suspect DOA on the scene. Officer Reginald Jake Gutierrez. End of watch, November 30th, 2016.